vertigo. And I want one of those 1976 CD compilations. That sounds awesome. That was really fabulous. Thank you so much, Don. Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
It is truly wonderful to see you all. This is a very special weekend for me and for all of us. Today I'm going to be honored to share with you a few reflections about Westtown in 2019. But before we go any further, I just want to take a few moments to share a few words of appreciation. I'm sure you will understand how many people worked so hard and brought a lot of sweat and toil to bear so that you could have a fabulous weekend where you are safe and well-nourished and entertained and inspired. And I'm sure you will want to join me in thanking our friends in facilities and housekeeping, transportation and security, food services, communications, technology, and the archives, the front office, the upper school office, the school store and this very theater, athletics and auxiliary programs, upper school students and faculty, and special shout-outs to students and faculty from all three divisions who shared their great work in the Student Showcase, the Student Fair, and various other events across campus this weekend, and those who brought Quakerism to life this past Thursday, the All-School Spiritual Life Committee, the Upper School Religious Life Committee, the Quaker Leadership Program, the Middle School Leadership and Middle School Clerks, and the Upper School Religion Department. Above all, our wonderful friends in the Advancement Office, Ellen Urbanski, Chris Batley, Becky Bernstein, Elizabeth Como, Zoe Marshall, Megan Schlickman, Ray Slater, Courtney Tyus, and the man of the hour, a person of unbelievable creativity, energy, and enthusiasm. Please join me in a warm round of applause for our fabulous Carl Bella. We look forward to this weekend all year, and it is so great that you are here. And sitting up here, I find myself awestruck by the depth and duration of the Westtown relationships in this theater. Reunion gatherings from the 5th to the 80th, classes from 1938 to 2018. Two women previously mentioned in this room, Lou Evans and Marion Fusen, have between them 168 years of history at Westtown, first as students and then as alumni. For myself, not to brag or anything, but at Westtown School, I have accrued a grand total of 97 weeks. That's 680 days, folks. 680 joyful, challenging, and blessed days as head of school of your alma mater. Serving as head of school at Westtown is an indescribable privilege, an enormous pleasure, and a true honor. As I'm approaching my 2-year mark in this position, though, I have noticed some very strange things happening in my life. Now, the first one that I want to tell you about has to do with technology, and we don't have a great track record of that this morning. But I think you're all familiar with autocorrect. You all have autocorrect on your devices, right? Okay? So on some devices these days, your smartphones, your tablets, autocorrect, actually learns your writing preferences. It learns the spelling of unusual names, I don't know, Jueds or something like that. On my devices, all of a sudden, autocorrect now changes the word light, L-I-G-H-T, to the word light, capital L-I-G-H-T. Somehow, in 680 days, I think I've been holding a lot of people in the light, capital L-I-G-H-T. And here's another thing. The other day I was listening to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR, which is not itself an unusual thing. But it was unusual that I heard a joke that nobody in the audience seemed to get but me, but I think you'll get it. The topic was social media, and somebody on that show mentioned Friendster. Do you remember Friendster? People my vintage or thereabouts? The original social media site long before Facebook. Somebody made the joke that Friendster must have been social media for Quaker mobsters. Thank you, that's funny, right? I thought that was hilarious. I laughed my head off in the car and no one in the show got it. So I came up with a game. If Friendster makes you think of Quaker Mafia, you might just be a Westonian. If your devices autocorrect L-I-G-H-T to capital L-I-G-H-T, you might just be a Westonian. Okay, it's not a great game, it's not Monopoly. I got some more. If you've accumulated more than your fair share of moose paraphernalia in your life, you might just be a Westonian. If your conversation features words and acronyms not to be found in any dictionary on this earth, Striking Granolithic KOB, you might just be a Westonian. And apparently, if you are willing to scuba dive under an iceberg, I gotta see that one, you might just be a Westonian. So that's my game. Try playing it this weekend and let me know what you come up with. This weekend is special for all of us because it is by connecting with all of you that we at the school today deepen our understanding of what it means to be a Westonian. And in turn, if, as was suggested, you are able to spend some of your precious time on campus this weekend connecting with today's students, if you're able to visit the student showcase this afternoon or go to the symposiums, I believe that you will find that you share as alumni with today's students a common understanding of what it means to be a Westonian. This was actually the query that guided our worship this past Thursday at all-school meeting for worship in Coach Downey Court. What does it mean to be a Westonian? And into the stillness, or as still as Coach Downey Court can get, ministry was offered by a number of students. There was a senior, a middle schooler, and then what felt like half a dozen third graders. We have a very loquacious class of 2028. But all of them lifted up qualities that I know you would recognize to be of the essence at Westtown. Kindness, deep listening, compassion, respect for others in all their glorious diversity. In other words, if you are determined to heed the Quaker calling to seek out and honor that of God in every person, you just might be a Westonian. That calling remains essential to who we are as a community and to what we aspire to be in the world today. And today, of course, it is more important than ever. And today that calling is heard at Westtown in a very particular way, and I want to tell you about it. Today's faculty, staff, and students understand and agree that this calling means working avidly, above all things perhaps, on diversity, access, equity, and inclusion at our school. We know that in 2019, we cannot fairly claim to seek out, let alone to honor, that of God in each other without urgently pursuing diversity among our students and faculty, and making Westtown as accessible as it can be to all persons regardless of means, without striving to make Westtown as inclusive and equitable as possible for persons of any and all identities, any and all races, ethnicities, national origins, gender identities, sexual orientations, and religions. In today's world, riven by difference and discord, this is critical, foundational work for the Quaker calling at the heart of the Westtown mission. And the good news is that there are fabulous things happening on campus today with regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our student of color population this year is the largest in history, at 28% in the entire school and 33% in the upper school. This year, we invested $8 million in financial aid That, folks, is a quarter of our operating budget, a third if you include tuition remission. Student affinity groups on campus are active and thriving. Our Black Student Union, Black Women's Affinity Group, Latinx Leadership, Asian Student Association, Rainbow, and Students of Color Association. By the time they reach upper school, students can now choose from electives in the African American experience, Asian American experience, and Latinx American experience. But as early as lower school, students find a curriculum and an environment intentionally crafted to ensure that all children see themselves reflected there. For one story this week, lower school chose an immigration story by a Mexican-American author who described her journey and the importance of libraries and stories in her life as an immigrant. Early on in their 8th grade year, middle schoolers discuss a piece by Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, cautioning against accepting one cultural perspective as universal. Faculty and staff across the school engage in robust professional development in cultural competency, positive racial identity development, and implicit bias. And throughout the school, there is passionate and intentional work among faculty to ensure that students of all backgrounds are represented in leadership positions and advanced coursework. Put another way, if it is a driving imperative for you that all community members should feel valued and embraced, you just might be a Westonian. Those of you here for your reunions will understand that it is when children and teens feel truly included and truly seen for who they are, that's when they plant the seeds of wonderful memories that they will come back and celebrate 5 years later, 25 years later, 75 years later. And more importantly, that's when we set them on a course for a purposeful, grounded, and healthy life, when we as a school community succeed in seeking out and honoring that of God in them. You will also understand that at times the best of intentions in this regard can fall short of what is needed, and that we are not perfect. Throughout our history, from 1799 to date, countless Westonians have felt seen and valued at this school. But we also need to recognize that many have not. You'll remember that Westtown did not admit African American students until 1948. Some of you may have read the excellent action research and oral histories collected by teacher Pat McPherson, herself an alumna celebrating her 50th reunion today. Pat, are you here? I don't think she's present, but you'll find her today. If you have read Pat's work called Schooled in Diversity, you will have read that only 5 of the 7 Black women enrolled at Westtown in the 1950s survived what they called great isolation in order to graduate. One Westtown alumna of color wrote in an essay in Pat's collection that, quote, social isolation defined our experience. Another commented, I don't think the teachers had any conception of the problems I was going through, except to criticize me academically. Another was made to feel, as she put it, quote, that black was ugly in the white world of Westtown. These are deeply painful observations, and yet they are truths of fellow Westonians, and as such, acknowledging them frankly is a critical part of our work. Seeking out and honoring that of God requires clarity. If we fail to be clear-sighted with regard to our shortcomings, we risk falling short again and again. And I'm going to give you an example from my very own desk from just this winter. This winter, the school sent the alumni community a holiday video that some of you might have seen. It was a compilation of archival film footage of winter scenes at school from years and decades past. Skating, sledding, skiing, campus blanketed by snow. In putting together the video, our intention was to evoke the school's rich history of keeping students warm in winter through camaraderie and community, and to share a message of timeless peace and love. Many had the luxury of receiving it in just the way it was intended. But what we failed to recognize before it was too late was that the video, without proper context, without proper acknowledgement and framework, would not evoke nostalgia, but disappointment and even bitterness among alums who did not see themselves reflected in the footage and who indeed were not properly included or supported at Westtown at the time those films were recorded. In response to the email I received, to the video, I received a very important email. The sender identified herself as an alumna, having been one of the very few people of color at Westtown during her time here in the 80s. She wrote to me that as she saw the video, it seemed like Westtown was, quote, trying to take us back to those times when people of color were completely invisible and most definitely on the margins. She asked me, what kind of good old days is this promoting? It grieves me that by the time I, from my position of white privilege, recognized the implications of that video, that it had already done harm. It had already landed as a barb and an insult. I don't know how many people felt about it the way the alumna who wrote to me felt about it, and I don't have any way of reaching out to them. All I could do was assure that one alumna that I saw her feelings as entirely justified, and that we would learn from what she had told us. To seek out and honor that God in each other is such a simple precept, but let's never make the mistake of thinking that it's easy. It's work. It requires us to be humble. It requires us to check our privilege. It requires clarity. And at this juncture, when such deep pain has been exposed across our society, our Quaker calling demands that we face painful truths. But if we can be clear-eyed about where we have fallen short, we will be clear-eyed as we move forward. In Michael Pollan's latest book, How to Change Your Mind, he exhorts those who are seeking healing as follows. Look for the darkest corner in the basement and shine your light there. I don't think Pollan is a Quaker, at least he's not a Brunster, but he does speak our language. His advice is based on groundbreaking scientific research involving the use of psychedelic drugs as therapy, as healing treatment for mental and emotional issues, addiction, anxiety, depression. From places of deep pain, subjects are advised that during the therapy, if they find anything frightening, a monster, an enemy, a phantom, a villain, they must move not away from it, but towards it. They must look it in the eye and ask, what can I learn from you? In pursuit of learning and growth, in pursuit, if you will, of continuing revelation, you don't run away from your bête noire, you run towards them. Pollan's research echoes accounts of dream work among traditional societies. In his book, Pygmies and Dream Giants, American anthropologist Hilton Stewart wrote about the Sonoy people of Malaysia and their practice of dream work. If you're familiar with this field, you'll know that Stewart has been kind of discredited as an anthropologist, but as a work of psychology, it's totally fascinating stuff. As a society, the Sonoy were remarkably peaceful, harmonious, amicable, and happy. How is that possible, Stewart asked. He said that the answer was in their shamanistic teachings about lucid dreamings. The shamans would teach that if in dreams you encounter a monster, what you do is you move towards it, you embrace it, and you hold that monster until it gives you a gift. Our Quaker calling remains Westtown's most potent way of seeking healing, peace, and a better world. It requires us to hold in the light who have not felt that of God in them went sought and seen in our school. It requires us to look at our individual and collective shortcomings and to ask our history, what gift do you have to give me? What can I learn from you? I see enormous, heartwarming evidence everywhere that our school is ready and willing to work that edge in service of our calling to seek out and honor that of God in each other. It's right there in the way Westtown teaches history. As early as 4th grade, students' introduction to colonial American history is now being taught as an exercise in discerning where power lies. And our 9-year-old students are learning to ask the crucial question, who is powerless here? Whose story is not being told? By the time students arrive in upper school, they turn in Peace and Justice to Korematsu v. United States, which upheld the constitutionality of the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. And those students get that it is an example of how the powerful have marginalized the powerless over time, of how dominant voices have written our history in a way that silences minority voices. Seniors and now juniors may undertake service projects at our sister school in Ghana, but before departing, they are asked to read Ghanaian-American author Yagi Asi's novel Homegoing, which I highly recommend, which traces 7 generations of a family, starting with its victimization by North Atlantic slave traders, through the legacy of colonialism in Africa and the legacy of slavery itself in the United States, right up through modern-day oppression. And one of those students' first stops in West Africa is Cape Coast Castle, to see where Europeans lived in luxury as abducted Africans were imprisoned and tortured before being shipped west as slaves. Right here at home, Westonians are willing to face uncomfortable truths, willing to ask, what can I learn from you? Pat McPherson's research was a huge step and a great gift to this school. If you haven't read some of it, please do. This year, a group of faculty took the baton from Pat, gathering as a professional development cohort under the leadership of teacher Marissa Colston, our Dean of Diversity and Inclusion, and teacher Kevin Epler in the Religion Department, to take up the task of seeking truth and reconciliation at Westtown School, a project which was modeled after the American Truth and Reconciliation movement, which in turn was inspired by truth and reconciliation work in South Africa after the dismantling of apartheid. Indeed, I think we might fairly say, if you are willing to look into the dark corners and shine a light there, you might just be a Westonian. This is work that will continue. It is so inspiring, and it will clear the way for an ever more inclusive and equitable Westtown. And I want to invite you, starting today, to be a part of it. For one thing, help us reach out to lost alumni. We know for a fact that some, including many alums of color, are lost to the school because, at least up until now, they have been uninterested to reconnect with a school where they felt unsought and unseen. Let them know that we have aspirations, and join us yourselves in those aspirations, that someday soon, Westtown could be as diverse as this country is diverse. Today, this country includes 39% people of color, and that percentage will top 50% in just a couple of decades. Wouldn't it be awesome if that's what our student body would like to? Help us imagine that someday soon, Westtown could be fully accessible to all students who connect with our mission regardless of means. Today, like the vast majority of independent schools, we are essentially tuition dependent. But wouldn't it be fabulous to ease that dependence and make admission to Westtown School need blind? Folks, it would take an additional $177 million in our endowment to fund this year's non-remission financial aid. But friends, that's not an unthinkable goal. It's a worthy goal for this worthy school. And finally, today and always, I want to encourage you to tell us your stories. Go to that alumni storytelling booth this very afternoon. We want to hear about your joys at Westtown, the way it has illuminated your purpose in life. But we also want you to feel welcome to shine your light wherever you are inclined. Share with each other, share with me, share with today's students what you think it means to be a Westonian. And finally, friends, a very specific invitation. If you haven't yet visited the girls' collection room this weekend, please do so. There you will find a new quilt, a long overdue companion piece to the others in the collection rooms, those depicting Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Mohandas K. Gandhi. For years, Westtown students rightly wondered, we have King, we have X, and we have Gandhi, and that's wonderful. But where are the women? And where are the women of color? The new quilt that was commissioned by Teacher Pat and installed a few weeks ago depicts Nobel and Pulitzer Prize winning writer Toni Morrison. The girls in our Black Women's Affinity group now have another mirror on the wall at Westtown. And all of us can now draw inspiration from the sight of Morrison every time we walk through West End. Check it out. Enjoy. I wish you joy this whole weekend. I wish you joy as you reconnect with this glorious campus, with your memories, with each other. I wish you joy as you run into a new generation of Westonians. And I wish you joy as you think with us about the generations of Westonians to come in future years and decades, how they will rise up as you have done to answer the calling to seek out and honor that of God in each other. Friends, I'm so privileged to be standing here with you today, alumni, alumni, and alumnex of Westtown School. Thank you, and happy Alumni Weekend.